This is a response to a video that may not be on YouTube by the time this response is looked at. It's a video by Professor Anton, Anton, talking about free speech, talking about YouTube protocols, whether it's okay to take a video down and kind of by inference censor access not only to one's own video but also to any comments that may have been made, to kind of cause a break in a possible line of response. There's all the kind of things that fall out of taking a video down, and then related issues like blocking users, deleting comments, those kind of practices. I suppose my point of contact there is about free speech, because when I think about free speech, I'm thinking about it in two ways. I should just say, by the way, the noise, this roaring noise you can probably hear, is the sound of chainsaws cutting trees down outside my office. I'm thinking about this free speech in two ways: freedom as opposed to captivity, and of course freedom in economic terms. I think when we usually think of free speech, we think of it as, or I should say, freedom. The freedom of speech only acquires value because sometimes speech is in chains. It might be in chains because it's restricted politically, or it might be in chains because it's restricted economically, or it might be in chains because of what you're talking about, Corey, which is the attention economy that functions on YouTube as elsewhere. In a sense, when you're working with an attention economy, it doesn't really matter whether whether speech is available to everyone or not. The workings of the economy of attention effectively prevent some speech being heard anyway, or minimise the impact that certain speech might have. So it might be caught up. So free speech might be caught up in, or speech itself, not free speech, might be caught up in the economics of attention. Those kind of chains. And the other, I guess, related concern I have about free speech is to do with value, because the one thing about YouTube speech and online speech more generally isn't so much that it's free, but it's very, very cheap. And by that I mean that it's that very little speech on the web generally, and YouTube is no exception. Very little speech is unique. It's very easy. I mean, as you rightly point out, Corey, I could download your video and have it on my hard drive. I could mirror it. I could do funny things with it if I wanted to risk the wrath of the DMCA, or whatever it's called, and re-upload it. So it's the uniqueness of speech is compromised by YouTube in a really helpful way, and by just digital technologies generally, I suppose. And what that's doing, I think, is it renders speech cheap. There's no, because it isn't unique, nor is it uniquely accessible. If one route to free speech is blocked, there's always ways around it. I think it's actually got a name, this thing, where it's almost impossible to delete oneself from the internet. If there's ever a picture of yourself taken doing something embarrassing, it's almost impossible to clear that. Is it the Judy Garland principle? No. Liza Minnelli principle? It's something like that it's called, where embarrassing materials lingers forever on YouTube because it's endless, or not just on YouTube, on the internet, because it's endlessly cloned and mirrored and circulated in the system once it's in there, really. It becomes ubiquitous. And when speech is ubiquitous, then it loses its rarity value and approaches the condition of freeness, or at least becomes very, very cheap, I think, in that sense as well. The knock-on effect, I think, of all that is that, and there's other things as well, which I'll maybe get to, the knock-on effect of all that is that it makes it less important than perhaps it might have been to delete a video. I mean, I never delete my videos, but I do keep some of them private. And I think if I took any down, and I probably will take one or two of them down at some point, I'll probably just make them private, just so I've got them, really. Because, well, partly for the reasons I've said, but also because there's nothing particularly special about the things I'm saying, or the things that you're saying, Corey, or anybody else is saying, and that's not an insult, of course. but the words that I'm saying could be easily be said by somebody else, and will be, I'm sure, at some point. And those other voices will not be, will be made available in ways that perhaps would not have been possible some years ago. So I think all of this rendering of speech ubiquitous, of rendering losing speech's uniqueness, losing the individual uniqueness of the individual voice, the networking of discourse as opposed to the line of discourse. If there's a rupture in a network of discourse, it doesn't disrupt the network, whereas if there's a rupture in a line of discourse, then effectively that line is severed. I think all those kind of ontological changes make huge differences to what we're talking about here. So when free speech becomes cheap speech, and when linear discourse becomes network discourse, I think it changes the game completely. And the loss of a voice is not the end of the world, and is certainly not a case, for the most part, for a kind of civil liberties concern, I wouldn't have said. Okay, I hope that makes sense.